Ah, yes. Another pride, another contrived discourse, seemingly for the express purpose of infighting. Is it trauma? Is it a psyop? Is it deeply counterproductive? Yes. Let's talk about that. Hello, swellmates. Welcome/welcome back. And dog bless you. Straight people. They live among us. They look just like you and me. They are members of our communities. Doctors, nurses, teachers. You yourself may be related to one or more heterosexuals. Straight people. I am qualified to talk about them because my bisexuality is best described as straight. But like, in a gay way. Straight people. Hi. How's it going? I'm actually half straight on my father's side, so we have a lot in common. Straight people. The term heterosexual was coined alongside the term homosexual back in 1869, nice, by Hungarian writer and human rights advocate Karl Kertbeny. Some believe he was a closeted gay man, some argue otherwise, but I'm going to go with what the man said himself. Kertbeny, far from perfect but ahead of his time, regarded himself as normal sex, i.e. heterosexual, but explored sex with men because, hey, why not? If you're going to write about something with any kind of authority, you gotta get in there and experience it for yourself. This distinction in behavior that Kertbeny assigned language to informed gay slang in the mid-1900s, the term straight, to refer to heterosexuals. Straight people. If you enjoy the term straight or heterosexual, you can thank the gays and their lifelong accomplice, an apparently heterosexual man who unapologetically knew his way around another man's dick. Straight people. Do they belong at Pride? Well, I love all of you. I really do. But do we really have to do this every year? Like, where do you guys get the energy? Are you not tired from being up for 2 days straight, the first for the partying, the second for the time it took to scrub glitter out of every crevice? Or tired from all the yarn bombing and tarot reading? I see you too. Whether it is throwing out the historical significance of the leather scene, snarling at asexuals just for existing as they are, or this apparent ire toward our heterosexually inclined gals and pals, I have some questions. Where is the gate? Who is in charge of it? And what does at Pride even mean? Like, genuinely. Are we talking about the parades that are now just one big capitalist circle jerk? Or the many events that range in everything from nature walks to bathhouse buddy bonding? Is it all Pride events or just the spicy ones? Or can the straight people be where the kink apparently is? The kink that nobody has explained or defined either? Just kink? Like, it has that same vagueness as at Pride. Someone explain. I don't understand. I really don't. Or do we just mean the entire month of June? Like, straight people can exist, but they have to barricade themselves indoors purge style, only the threat is being force-fed lemon squares and indoctrinated into bad posture rather than killed? I don't know, I don't watch that shit. From where I'm standing, it kinda looks like we are trying to enforce the same power structures we are meant to be escaping from. Those built on rigid categories, assigning labels to other people, and adhering to a hierarchy. But, you know, what do I know? This video is probably going to make some people mad, and that is fine. You are allowed to be mad. Just know before you comment that I can tell when somebody is offering genuine constructive feedback based on the things that I've actually said, and when someone is inferring things in my statement and using me as a scapegoat to channel all of their rage at because I'm visible on the internet. And with that out of the way, it's story time. Once upon a time, there was a girl from a tiny little town in the middle of booty-slapping nowhere. Quiet, introverted, a bit of a weirdo, and straight as an arrow. At least, that's what she told people. That's what you were supposed to tell people. That was the default state of being. Coming from her tiny little hometown where there were exactly 2 out gays her age, and both had been beaten bloody more than once by their classmates, straight was the only viable option. She got bullied enough for her ill-defined oddness, it was best not to put any fuel on that fire. Thus, straight was how she lived her every waking moment. That is, up until she moved to the big city. Having lived in her tiny little hometown for nearly 2 decades, the girl was used to everyone knowing everyone. To being recognized at every turn with a detailed social record looming over you at all times, a record that could be tarnished if you deviated from what was considered normal or acceptable. But in the city, there was a certain amount of anonymity in being just another face in the crowd. Safety in numbers. The liberating feeling of not being singled out for being a little weird. In fact, the attention that weirdness drew came from other people who were themselves a little weird. A little queer, if you will. It made queerness start to feel normal. Something most of us are taught we should be. Something that keeps you safe from being beaten bloody. Normal. Something only straightness used to offer. She began to realize that maybe straight wasn't mandatory. It certainly wasn't the best way to describe her identity. She had spent years hiding behind the label, and that was a hard habit to break. But seeing queerness as its own normal helped. It made it safer to question and explore things that were previously unaddressed. And the more she explored, the more free she felt, the happier she became. She couldn't help but wonder what would have happened had she never connected with this new normal, with the people who welcomed her in to share it despite her previous label. There were certainly some who saw her former straightness as something worthy of scrutiny or distrust, but a much greater number who didn't question, lead, or pressure her one way or the other. They simply provided an accepting space for her to do her own work. So she embraced her sexuality, embodied her truth, and lived happily ever after. Except, psych, you knew it was a story about me all along. I used to be a cisgender heterosexual woman, and now I am a transgender bisexual man. Riddle me that!
Holy double identity!
I used to consider myself a straight person. A straight cis person, no less, and I'm sure many of the queerdos watching this can say the same. I'm sure many of you watching still feel the most comfortable with that label. But you like it here. You like being around people like little old me. And maybe that's just how it is. Maybe that's just how it is. Maybe you just feel more comfortable in queer spaces because you have done a lot of identity work and you appreciate the fluidity of them. We're going to get into that. Maybe there are underlying reasons that you have yet to interrogate and don't really feel comfortable or ready to. It doesn't matter because it's nobody's fucking business but yours. Compulsory heterosexuality is one hell of a drug, my friends, and despite growing acceptance of queerness, not everybody can just punch their way through it. Some just don't self-advocate like others might, some haven't had the opportunity to explore, some have very good reason to be in hiding and don't owe anyone an explanation. And I gotta ask, how can anyone look at anyone else and make that call? How can you look at another person and just know what their identity is? And I ask this because I've had to ask myself that before. I have fallen into this trap. I'm gonna just answer the question for you. You can't. But what you can do is alienate a queer person from a space that they might need to access in order to be themselves. Straight people. Could have been you once, and it could be many queer people still. It was certainly me, and even when I acknowledged my sexuality, I still appeared to be a straight cis woman because I was dating a straight cis man. A straight cis man who was supportive of my bisexuality in ways many other queer people weren't, specifically because I was in a relationship that was straight passing. A straight cis man who saw my struggles with gender dysphoria and encouraged me to do what I needed to do to feel comfortable in my own skin, even knowing what that would likely mean for our relationship. Turns out I was not as straight or cis as my origins led me to believe, but he was, and he still is. And had I not had him in my corner, had the familiarity and the comfort of our friendship as my entire life turned upside down while I explored my identity, I don't know where I would be right now. To say that a queer person dating a straight person is in a straight relationship reinforces this idea of heterosexuality as the default, as something that is stronger than other forms of love and expression. This is why many of us believe instead that a straight person dating a queer person is in a queer relationship, not the other way around. Speaking for myself, I believe this because I think that human expression is more powerful than the hegemonic systems put in place to limit it. Straight partners do not understand what it is to be queer through lived experience, but they are still important parts of the queer community through their love of the people within it. See also the straight parents of queer kids, the straight kids of queer parents, straight friends who are ride or die, and straight trans people who don't owe anyone their medical history so that they can feel included at a picnic. Straight being a category that excludes someone from pride celebrations implies that there is no meaningful overlap between queer and straight experiences, which simply isn't true. Straight people. They are our partners, our family, our friends. But this is where I make some of you really mad, because even going beyond the cishet people who are exploring their identities and on their way toward queerness, or the cishet people who have queer loved ones, what if straightness itself could be queer? A lot of you really didn't like that, and you can disagree, but just let me explain. Queerness as a concept is so much deeper than simply not cis or not straight. What it means to each of us is going to be different because we are different people, but here is what it means to me. We live under imposed binaries. Man or woman, straight or gay, masculine or feminine, that offer no flexibility, no in-between, and no beyond. Queerness is a rebellion against the power structures intent on erasing that truth. It is not opening a door. It is tearing down the walls meant to contain us in the first place. Queerness is taking a stand against the practice of assigning labels to others to make them fit into an externally imposed system. So with this understanding, I would like to ask, is the presence of straight people in queer spaces heterosexualizing our glorious gayness, or is it perhaps queering what it is to be straight? Now, don't get me wrong, there is important nuance here. Straight privilege is obviously a thing. There are clear benefits to playing the heterosexual card, and those who do often show up with ignorance that they need to unpack. But this is true regardless of how straight someone actually is. The issue is not the identity itself, but rather the ideas that they are exposed to because of the label that goes with it. The idea that that label is the default. I mean, Lord knows I was ignorant as hell when I first showed up on the scene. And I cringe to think about it now, but hey, you know, that means I've grown, right? Because I had the opportunity to. People who have unpacked that ignorance understand the importance of sexual and gender minorities having spaces away from it all where they can move freely. So, does it not benefit everyone to facilitate a world where doing that kind of work is possible? Most queer people are pushed to do that work out of necessity. If your identity is labeled deviant under a certain social system, you often have to interrogate it for the sake of survival. That is a traumatizing and exhausting process. And it is also true that there are unique challenges to having the apparent default identity as well. It's harder to look at and analyze and unpack your identity if you've never really had to. The privilege is in not needing to for the sake of survival, and that is a pretty significant privilege, but it's a double-edged sword, because that internal examination is the key to real freedom and connection. It's what allows you to see yourself honestly and thus share that person with other human beings. So it's not that queer people need to do the work for straight people, that we need to just grin and bear it through all of the ignorant questions. It's more about sharing what it is that we have created and acknowledging how everybody can benefit from accessing it. It's also about not forgetting our history as we continue to make it, because gatekeeping queerness goes way back. There is a lot of respectability politics wrapped up in this, vying for the status of normal under a colonial, patriarchal, capitalistic, white supremacist system. You knew that you weren't getting through a video without me mentioning those things, but for the purposes of this video, we are just going to look at the practice of assigning the straight label for the purpose of gatekeeping. Biphobia from gays and lesbians who think that bisexual people are either straight and lying or homosexual and in denial. Transphobia from cis LGBs who insist that trans people are just heterosexuals with a fetish. Aphobia from allosexual queer people who argue that asexual people are the straights trying to infiltrate. How many times do we have to move this freaking line before we acknowledge that the problem is the line existing in the first place? This practice completely erases the many overlapping aspects of our identities while reinforcing the undue power assigned to heterosexuality. It also implies that the goal is to completely do away with identity-specific labels such as gay or lesbian, which simply isn't true. Anyone who is pushing for more inclusivity, who has an understanding of how to connect with other human beings, knows that the labels we use to describe ourselves are helpful, they're important, and that we're not in a post-structural world just yet. Fostering an open and inclusive attitude does not mean that we get rid of identity-specific spaces entirely. It just means that we have a more nuanced conversation about them. It means we stop gatekeeping the very concept of pride, that we stop imposing labels on others, and that we stop assuming we can know someone's values based on their immutable characteristics. It means that we confront the false dichotomy of queer or bigot. Straight people. What does that even mean? Because if you mean transphobes, homophobes, and misogynists, just say that. The messy truth of the matter is that there are straight people out there doing more work for queer liberation than many gay, lesbian, and trans people, and I hone in on those specific identities for a reason. I've got more in common with a cisgender straight boy who is still learning the lingo but genuinely wants to help than I do with Buck Angel, Ariel Scarcella, or Blair White, and I certainly hope those of you watching can say the same. Identity matters. Social position is important, but it is behavior and consciousness where the heavy lifting happens. We can't make outside calls on who does and does not belong at Pride, because Pride doesn't belong to any one of us or any specific letter in the acronym, and when we let ourselves get caught up in these conversations every fucking June, we really have to ask who it's benefiting. We really need to ask if we are accomplishing anything that affects our material reality, or if we are just taking the bait set out by outside agitators who are looking to weaken our movement. I wanted to talk about this because I noticed a great many people doing exactly that, and because I have taken the bait before too. I wasn't always gates open, come on in. It is something that I had to work on, and I wish that someone had been there to say to me what I'm saying to you now. I understand the defensive drive. We have been laid low for so long that it feels so much safer to be in a position of power. But if we really want to get back at the ways that we have been hurt by being categorized and restricted on the grounds of identity, we need to remove the power from that practice entirely. Break the system, love the people, and look at the ways that we can help each other. Straight people. If that term describes you and you are still watching, I have some suggestions for those of you who would like to show up. It is very important to understand the history of Pride, why we still need it, and what it's actually about. Queer people were and continue to be policed for our identities in ways that straight, cisgender people never have been on those grounds. Our spaces are fun as hell, but they are not just fun. They're safe for us, and they're built on a lot of struggle and loss. Learn that history, recognize its importance. Recognize why it's important to spend more time listening than speaking when you're invited in. Engage with our art. Listen to our stories, and if you benefit from the lessons we share, support us. This could be purchasing art or donating to our fundraisers, but it can also be sharing with other straight people, confronting the attitudes that hurt us so that we don't have to. Understand that it's not so much that you can't be part of something, it's that you shouldn't always want to be. Part of supporting someone often means respecting their need to sometimes be around other people who just get it without having to run checks on people who don't. And that's not just a straight people thing. This is true for all of us. More white queers especially really need to apply this understanding to BIPOC queer spaces. It's essential to be able to let your guard down and just feel understood without having to earn it through emotional labor. And finally, when you are called in, really ask where you're needed rather than simply going where you would like to be. I remember attending multiple Pride events a few years ago, and one thing really stuck with me. At the parade, the MC, a glorious drag queen, was engaging the audience by calling upon them for cheer sections. Let's hear it from the lesbians, let's hear it from the gay men, let's hear it from the trans people. And the loudest, longest, most enthusiastic cheer came when she called upon straight allies, which is great. But the day before, I had showed up to the trans march, a protest, and the crowd was a meager handful in comparison. Now, I obviously don't know how many of these people were straight cisgender people, we've already talked about that, but it shouldn't have been the numbers that it was in comparison to the parade, in comparison to the parties, in comparison to the festivals. The people who did show up gave it their all, and that stuck with me a lot more than some cheering in front of the Royal Bank of Canada float. Allies show up when it's fun and convenient, but accomplices show up when they're needed. So by all means, show up for the party, but know that the protest is where we need you, especially in the current political climate. So straight people, why do they belong at Pride? Because they're not as straight as you think they are. Because they love a queer person. Because they're drawn to the deconstruction of systems that are meant to reinforce a status quo. Because they love and want to celebrate queer culture. Because we need each other if we are going to make this world better. I'm going to leave it there. Please take a moment to sit with yourself, your feelings, maybe look in the mirror, maybe say your name before using internet anonymity to get angry. Just a suggestion, those of you who do take the time to do this can use the Cool Kids Club code Potato Pancakes at the beginning of your comment so that I know you actually took the time to listen. Thank you very much for doing that, even if you disagree. Disagreement is fine. I hope you got something of value out of this. And yeah, as always, thanks for watching.